Okay, good morning everybody. My name's Andrew Kelly. I'm one of the speakers here today. Obviously I'm from Australia originally, so if I sound a bit tired, it's because it's 3 in the morning for my body clock, so I didn't sleep so well last night. If you see me yawning, it's not because my presentation is boring. I think it's super exciting. It's just that I'm about to fall over asleep. Yes, as I said, my name's Andrew Kelly. I'm a Google developer expert for Android, but in the field of tinkering around, I've been playing with my Google Home back home in Australia, and thought I'd come and do a talk today and try and help you get up to speed, if you haven't already, on creating your first kind of chatbot for your Google Home. Obviously, this talk goes down quite well in Australia because nobody's seen a Google Home, whereas here you've probably all got 3 different rooms of your house. So I'm going to take you through the basic steps. I'm going to do live coding, which is always going to be fun, to create your first chatbot. So hopefully by the end of this session, I'll have something working, and then you'll be able to see how to take some info away and get a chatbot yourself working. We're going to do some baby steps kind of stuff here, so we can bring you up to speed, and we'll take it from there. So, first of all, actions on Google. When I did this talk last time, my slides were on this side, so I'm now having to reverse my brain. Actions on Google let you build for the Google Assistant, and the Google Assistant is available currently in a couple of places. Obviously, Google Home being the kind of the key one that people have seen. Google Assistant is also available on your Pixel phone and through the Allo app, which you can download from the Google Play Store, and you can imagine that it's going to be in many places in the future, Android Auto, all that kind of stuff, so big things are coming. There's 2 ways you can kind of interact with your Google Home. I'm just going to use Google Home for now because we're part of the demo. You've got direct actions where you speak to the device. The device interaction is handled by Google Assistant itself. The developer of the backend response, maybe Spotify, handles the fulfillment of the request, and the interaction is taken care of for you. So this is where the live demo bit comes in. Let's turn the mic on.
The mic's back on.
There we go. So an example of a direct action might be, okay Google, play Rage Against the Machine.
Sure, here's Rage Against the Machine on Google Play Music.
So there we go. So we had a direct action there where I asked to play some music. Google Play Music was the piece of software that fulfilled that request, but the Google Assistant was the one that facilitated the interaction. Unfortunately, direct actions at the moment, this may change when Google I/O comes around, aren't open for developers yet. So we're not going to be talking about those today. What we're going to be talking about today is conversation actions. Now, conversation actions, as the name implies, are like a 2-way dialogue with the Google Assistant. You handle the parsing of the request and the response, so you get to hear the text that was spoken, or the voice that was spoken to the Google Home, or the text that came through from the Google Allo app. You parse the intent of that message, you decipher what was being asked for, and then you handle the response to fulfill that request. It's available today for development and deployment, so we're going to walk through how we create our first conversation action. And my example today is going to be a sort of a Homer Simpson, a Simpsons-inspired Dr. Nick kind of character. So we're going to be providing medical advice, which is the kind of thing that Google Home will probably never ever do, certainly not without some big waiver. So we're going to create a chatbot that kind of does some silly bits and pieces. One of the things you want to think about when you're designing your chatbot is to come up with a persona. So maybe you work on a team by yourself, if that makes sense, or you're on a larger team. Having a persona lets you come up with a consistent message or a consistent way that your persona is going to respond to the user. Now this is important because you might want to have a standard on, is our chatbot going to be a serious chatbot? If we're doing a doctor as an example, you want it to be kind of serious. It's going to be talking about medical things. You don't want it to be kind of whimsical and, hey, oh, you got cancer. That's terrible. Oh no. So you want to make sure that as the developers who are working on the chatbot, they have a consistent set of guidelines on how the interaction is going to work between the user and the chatbot. So you might come up with some sample conversation dialogues. You might sit there and go, what questions are we going to kind of answer? What kind of things will we say? What kind of, we don't want to say, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, I didn't understand. You kind of want to refine your conversations. If you did miss an important piece of information, you want to sort of clarify rather than saying, sorry, I don't know, and just bail out. You want to ask another follow-up question to say, sorry, did you say that your head was hurting, or did you say that your feet were hurting? That kind of thing. So one of the things you can download from the Google Actions webpage, which I've got some links for in the final slide, is this little PDF, which is their persona guideline. So this takes you through all the bits and pieces that you might want to consider and all the things you want to think about when you're creating your persona. Print it out, stick it on your desk, and use this as an example of the things you need to be setting up. One of the nice little things about Google Home is you can choose what kind of voice you want your persona to have. So there's a choice of 2 male voices and 2 female ones. So you can pick the one that might be more appropriate for your use cases as well. So how does it kind of work? How does you speaking into Google Home? Let me just put the mic. Did I mute that?
The mic is muted.
Yes, good. Okay. Speaking into the Google Home device, what actually happens to make the request come back with a response? So we have our user here. He speaks to the Google Assistant, which is the 4 little circles there, and they come up with an invocation trigger. So, okay, Google, I want to speak to Dr. Nick. We generate a first response, which might be, okay, everybody, I'm here, I'm Dr. Nick, how can I help you today? And then the user makes a request, my head hurts, what can you do about it? So that kind of is the basic request response cycle. There's 2 ways in that setup to create that kind of setup. One is to use the Actions SDK yourself. Now you get to handle the raw requests and the response. So you then have to parse the intent out of that particular message. You would need to kind of use some natural language processing to see, okay, what are the verbs, what are the bits and pieces I'm being asked to do. So you have to extract from that request what the meaning is, what the intents are, what are the entities, what are being spoken about for your particular domain. That's pretty tricky stuff. So, API.ai, a website or a platform that I think Google purchased last year sometime, have done all the hard work for you, which is great. They provide kind of natural language processing. They've got some AI learning bits and pieces in there and refinement, and you can do debugging of your conversation, which is really handy. So we're going to focus on this bit today because it's easy to kind of see and do, and it gets you up to speed quicker, and you can see results pretty quickly. So how does that interaction look? It's kind of like this. So we still speak to the Google Assistant, which is the 4 dots, remember? But the Google Assistant now goes through API.ai to then provide you with a parsed sort of response request, so you can see what are the entities, they've been broken down. You set all these bits and pieces up inside API.ai, which is what I'm going to show you, and then your back-end server that's going to process the request gets a nice kind of JSON payload saying, hey, this is what the user asked for, these are the bits and pieces I've extracted from that for you, go away, get me a response, and bring it back. So, show me the code. This is what we want to be seeing, and this is where, fingers crossed, the presentation gods are with us. So, let's go back here. So, okay, it's a little small on the screen. Is that fairly readable at the back? You can kind of see. Yeah? Brilliant. Excellent. Little thumbs up. Beautiful. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create our a new agent. So I've got a backup one that I was working on yesterday, just in case everything goes horribly wrong. But we're going to do live coding. So the first thing you need to do, this is the API.ai website. You kind of just log in with your Google credentials to create your first agent. So we're going to give our agent a name. Using the word doctor, I have found, doesn't seem to work very well with Google Home, so we're just going to call our one today Chicago Roboto, because we're all here, and hopefully that will work just as well. So basic name, easy peasy to set up. We can leave all the other bits and pieces blank. It's going to be public. We're going to be using English. No white spaces, of course. There we go. Now, one of the things you have to remember to do when you're using API.ai is hit save every 3 seconds. It's just, every time you make a change, you have to hit save, otherwise it doesn't remember what you've done. So, we've created our agent, Chicago Roboto. It comes back with a couple of default intents. Now, these are the things that are going to initially respond to the welcome event, or the initial interaction when you launch the chat bot. And then there's like a default fallback with a whole load of, sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you please repeat what you just said? We're going to be creating some intents today. In fact, hang on a sec. Get my speaker notes that I was writing yesterday so I can remember which order we're doing things in. And we're going to go through the list and create some new intents for our kind of fake sort of medical doctor situation setup. So, let's just change the default welcome intent to start with. So here, we're going to be brought into the welcome intent is the first thing that we're going to hear as the user. So at the bottom, it's got a whole load of responses. So when you say, okay, Google, I want to speak to Chicago Roboto, it's going to come back and it might choose one of the following. It might say, hi, hello, g'day, greetings, how are we going? Not very good. We want to kind of really start with a question. So we want to kind of introduce ourselves. Hey, I'm Dr. Nick. How can I help you today? So we're going to delete these initial ones and come up with a slightly better. There we go. Everybody. Today. So that's a bit more of a welcoming statement that we want to have. We're going to hit save, of course. Now you can also use this opportunity to list out all the things maybe that your agent can do. So we're going to set up 3 intents today. We're going to set up the ability to make an appointment with your doctor. We're going to do a fake kind of diagnosis of a medical condition, and we're going to have something where you query for test results, and we're going to show some different bits and pieces there. So that might be something that you want to have in your opening welcome message, so that the user knows then what to follow up. How can I help you today? There's no point going, well, I don't know, you can make appointments if you don't tell me you can make appointments. So we're just going to keep it simple, but yeah, that would be the place where you can expand out on what we're going to achieve. So, we'll test as we go. So, integrations. We want to integrate with our Google Home here, so we're going to switch on actions on Google Home, and we'll kind of test as we go. We're going to give our agent another name that we're going to use for testing. So again, we're going to go Chicago Roboto. And later on, we'll go through here. So this is where you can choose which voice you want to have. So we're going to use female, authorize. So I did an automatic log on there. You have to authenticate to do that. It just kind of flashed up on top of my Google credentials. In fact, since I was called Dr. Nick, we'll go with a male voice. And if we hit preview, we'll be able to test out our welcome intent. Now, if you don't have a Google Home, maybe you do, maybe you don't, there is a web simulator, which we're going to use initially to kind of do our testing. So if we click on the web simulator, we come with our fake Google Home, we hit start, and on the left here, we've got the dialog where we're going to type in to start with our interactions, and then we'll see some debug info on the right-hand side here. So we might start with let's see, okay, Google. We can avoid that one. I'd like to talk to cargo bottom. Fingers crossed, it'll come back with our little message that we set up.
Of Chicago Roboto.
Hi everybody, Dr. Nick here. How can I help you today?
How can I help you today? Now, if we're on HDMI, which we are, I would have hoped the sound would have come out. It actually does speak to you, to give you that funky feeling. But you can see the conversation is started off as we would hope, which is good. Part 1 underway. So, we head back to API.ai. We close this. Now, one of the things you can't hear through the screen, which is unfortunate, is the sort of audible keynotes that give you an indication of what's going on with the conversation. So when a conversation ends, you'll have a little diddly kind of thing to let you know that the conversation is now over. One of the things you want to make sure, and one of the things Google will pull you up on when you try and submit your chatbot to be published publicly, is you can't leave the microphone open. So if you ask a question at the end of an interaction, you want to handle that response. You can't just finish with a, okay, thank you very much, and then leave the microphone switched on, because the user is going to be still inside your chatbot, as it were. So one of the things you want to make sure is you always kind of close the microphone at the end of your conversation. So the first thing we're going to create is an intent, which we're going to call farewell, which is going to be the end of our kind of conversation. It's going to turn off the microphone so that when the user says, okay, goodbye, everything goes back to normal. So we might add at the top here some example things that the user might say. So they might say, bye, they might say farewell, see you later. And you can add to these over time. So these are just a couple of examples of things that the people might say as we're going along. When the user does say this, we want to have a nice little response. So we're going to enter the response at the bottom. Bye. I hope you're feeling better. And at the very bottom, kind of below the fold, it took me a while to find this when Google first sent me the email back saying, hey, we love your little Santa Claus chatbot, but you keep leaving the microphone open at the end of the thing, you need to really close it. I'm going, how the heck do we close it? Down at the bottom here, there's a little actions on Google, and you have to click this checkbox down the bottom which says end conversation. So when this intent gets fired, when the user says, okay, farewell, see you later, we say bye, I hope you're feeling better, and this is the thing that's going to end the conversation. So this is important to have one of these, which is why I kind of created first. So now if we go back to our list of intents, we've got the default welcome intent. Hi, I'm Dr. Nick, how can I help you today? We've got our farewell intent. Thank you very much. I hope you're feeling better soon. See you later. And we'll test those out in a second. So our chatbot is not very chatty yet. Let's create some bits and pieces. So we're going to create another intent around making an appointment. So this might be one of the things you want to do. Say, okay, Google, I want to speak to my doctor. Yes, okay, I want to make an appointment to come and see my doctor in person, perhaps. So let's create a new intent. Give it a name, of course. So, how do we do it? I want to give it some sample interactions again, so I want to make an appointment. Can I see doctor, please? Is the doctor available? Now this is good, but some of the information we might want to find out is, well, when do you want to actually come and see the doctor? You know, we need kind of like a date and a time when you want to come along. So let's add another expression. So can I see the doctor on Tuesday? Now, this is our first parameter. This is the first time we've seen this kind of pop up. So API.ai has recognized Tuesday as a keyword and has mapped it to system.date. So it's pulled out already some of the bits and pieces we talked about earlier that we don't want to have to handle ourselves. So it's recognized that we've typed in Tuesday as a date, and it's going, do you want me to call this sys.date? So now, if I said, can I see the doctor on Wednesday, it's going to automatically know that we're talking about dates, we're going to be talking about times in a second as well. So this means you don't have to start entering all the mundane stuff that you don't want to have to do. That's already been done for you. All the hard work on bits and pieces like this is taken care of for you, which is great. So that's good. It's identified that. And if we scroll down, we can see the list of parameters now that we're expecting to receive for this date is one of those there. So we might add in some sample responses. Let's think. So we want to say, sure, we can make in fact, let's do the other one first. So we're going to need two things. We're going to need basically a date and a time. Let's see, can I see the doctor at 2 p.m. Again, 2 p.m., common thing that we're going to be using, dates and times. It's pulled out, it's highlighted it. We scroll down into our list of parameters, and you can see time is there as well, which is good. So we might make these required fields by clicking this first checkbox here, because to make an appointment, you're going to have to know the date and the time, so there's no point having that interaction without it. So now down here at the bottom, our sample response, if we imagine that we do have the date and time presented to us, might be, sure, we can make an appointment for $date at $time. So this is going to come back, I want to make an appointment on Tuesday at 2 p.m. The response will be, sure, we can make an appointment for Tuesday at 2 p.m. So let's hit save. Now, without flipping backwards and forwards between the web simulator, we can actually try out some of our requests inside API.ai. So at the top right here, we've got a try it now little dialog where we can see some of the sample stuff. So I might type in, can I see the doctor? And it's come back with a response, which we can hopefully see down here on about the third line, going, what is the date? We didn't specify a date in that initial response, and it's come back going, well, hang on a sec, you've mentioned that date and time are required, so it's come back with a default response saying, well, what date do you want? We can refine this to make it a bit more friendly. So if somebody misses the date, we can ask, sure, what day would you like to come? And we can leave the time one as the default. So now, in this conversation, which is still going on, we can just type in something like tomorrow. And it's recognized again that we don't have the time from our initial request, so let's say 2 p.m. at the top here. And now the response, it's complete. We have all the required parameters have been typed in. And this is the kind of the conversation going backwards and forwards between the user through Google Home. This is just obviously testing at the moment. And you can see the rather computerized response. Sure, we can make an appointment for long date format, long time format. And this would be the kind of thing you'd hook into your back end, your calendar system, and send back the response. It would do lookups, is the doctor free, all that kind of thing. That's an exercise for the reader. But yeah, you can see we've parsed an intent. I want to see the doctor, and we've managed to extract some dates and times. And you can see just below, down here in the bottom right-hand corner, the parameters and the values that they represent, date and time, which you would then receive on the server as part of the JSON request and response. So that's kind of, let's have a look at our list of intents. There we go. So we've got farewell, we've got make an appointment. So that's using kind of some built-in system parameters. It recognizes date and time. We want to create some of our own entities, as they're called, in API.ai, and we're going to just kind of set up some diagnosis, like a medical diagnosis thing. So first of all, we want to maybe enter some things that can be painful, things that can be hurting. So we might have a list of things like, oh no, should I give it a name first? So body parts. And we might have head, body, leg, arm. So these are going to be our toes. Oh no, let's leave that one. So this is our domain model now. This is the point where you can take the entities that you care about for your particular use cases and enter them into the system so that they become things that can be extracted from the requests that the user makes. You can then assign these and link them back to the intent that is going to happen, and these are going to be your parameters that you're going to receive at the back end later on when you're making your your diagnosis on the actual expert system that's going to handle all these bits and pieces. We can have synonyms for bits and pieces. So instead of body, we might have torso, and plurals as well. Let's just put legs over here, and arms down here. Obviously, we've only got one head. So we go back to our intent. And we'll do the diagnosis one. One thing to note about the entities: if you've got thousands of entities for your particular system, you can upload them through like a CSV file, so you can do like a bulk upload. You don't have to type them all in by hand. API.ai also has a programming interface as well, so you can actually just push them straight into API.ai from whatever back-end system you have as well. So you don't have to go through this manual process of setting everything up by hand, which is very handy. So let's create a new intent and see how it picks up our particular entities. So this one's going to be diagnosis, if I can spell. So how are we going to kick off this intent? What are we going to listen for? What's the user going to come along and say? So it's like, my head hurts, and boom, straight away it's picked out head as one of the keywords from our list of entities. It's mapped it to body parts, which is what we called our entity, and it's resolved the name head, which is exactly what we want to see. But the user might not say, a body part straight away. It might be, I feel unwell, I feel sick, my arm is sore, my leg is bleeding. As you can see, we've covered just about all possible medical scenarios there. Years of watching ER and House. So, obviously, if we're going to do a diagnosis, we're going to need to know what bit hurts. So we're going to mark body parts as required. And we're also going to mark it as a list. So it might be that you've been knocked off your push bike, and your head's bleeding and your arm's bleeding, so you can receive more than one of these parameters to the back end. So we're going to mark it as a list. And again, we'll provide a prompt rather than the default one. Where does it hurt? So we can prompt when the user doesn't respond. Hit save again. Text response again. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come up with a canned response for this particular scenario. Oh dear. I'm sorry. That dollar body parts autocomplete. Excellent. Dollar body part is sore. It could be worse. Now, in this situation, that's kind of a very dramatic end to the conversation. It could be worse than boom. We don't really want to do that necessarily. because we haven't marked this intent as the end of a conversation. We want to keep the conversation going. We want to keep the dialogue with the user going. So because we haven't marked this one as the end of a conversation, we should probably end our statement here with another question. So, oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that body part is sore. It could be worse though. Is there anything else that hurts? Question mark. So now you can build up a conversation over time. In fact, let's be more generic. Let's say, is there anything else I can help you with? Hit save. Let's try it now. A little test on the top right hand side. I feel unwell. Mandatory question, parameter is missing, body parts, comes back, where does it hurt? My head. Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that your head is sore, it could be worse though, is there anything else I can help you with? So this is exactly the kind of conversation we want to have backwards and forwards with the agent. And down at the bottom you can see the body parts, because we set it up as a list, it's in the kind of JSON square brackets, so you can have more than one of these. In fact, let's try that now. So I feel unwell. Where does it hurt? My legs and arms. Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that. Leg and arm. Okay, grammatically not correct, but hey, we're still just early phases. It could be worse though. And down here, you'll see at the bottom, body parts is now a list. Leg and arm. So obviously your expert system that's going to process this later on is going to now have the intent, where does it hurt. It can start building up a picture about, okay, what kind of diagnosis are we going to have for this particular medical condition, which is good. So if we go back to our list of intents, so we've got our diagnosis, we've got our farewell, we've got our make an appointment. So if we just switch over to the web simulator, we should be able to see now, are we still inside our previous conversation, or are we back to the beginning?
Sure, here is the test version of Chicago Roboto.
Hopefully it should be up to date.
Hi everybody, Dr. Nick here. How can I help you today?
Hi everybody, Dr. Nick here. How can I help you today? I'd like to make an appointment.
Sure, what day would you like to come?
Sure, what day would you like to come? Brilliant, this is exactly what I want to see. Let's say Wednesday. Thinking about it. We should be prompted.
What is the time?
What time? There we go. Let's say 10 a.m.
Sure, we can make an appointment for the 26th of April 2017 at 10 hours 0 minutes and 0
I'm not
seconds.
asking for a question at the end of this point here, so the microphone is still open now. So if I was to type in, I feel unwell,
Where does it hurt?
even though I wasn't prompted for how else can I help you today, the microphone is still switched on. We're still inside the agent at this point, so we haven't closed the microphone at the end of the making an appointment thing, so we should probably just tweak that one and tidy it up. But we're back in to the conversation continued is the point we're showing here, in that we went from making an appointment, which we managed to complete successfully, and we would have hopefully been prompted for, is there anything else I can help you with today? Yeah, well, I feel unwell. Okay, tell me more about this. Where does it hurt? So the conversation, we're building it up. It's going backwards and forwards between the agent and the user, and we're getting this nice, warm, fuzzy feeling inside that there is somebody real on the back end of this, and they do care about us deeply. Okay, so the third and sort of final one that I want to show was to do with sort of test results. We've kind of covered a lot of the bits and pieces in the diagnosis. So what we might do is skip ahead. Is it really 10:34 already? Crikey. Okay, so let's go back into our make appointment setup. We'll just add a quick question at the end of here. How else help. Hit save on that. So now we've got the question, so because the microphone's open, we haven't ended the conversation. We're going to keep that dialogue going backwards and forwards. If we come back over here, we're in the middle of the conversation now. I don't think it'll pick up if I say bye, because it's expecting me to say where does it hurt. So let's see if it kind of kicks in and realizes.
Bye, I hope you're feeling better.
There you go. So we say goodbye, it recognised that was a farewell, part of the intent. Bye, I hope you're feeling better, is the thing that comes back. So what we'll do is we'll skip the kind of test results. We've only got 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get time for some questions, if there are any. I'll quickly show you now. Obviously, these are all canned responses. They're all inside API.ai. There's no real magic happening here. These are all just kind of fake bits and pieces that are happening. You want to be able to connect this with your expert system, with your back end that's going to serve these requests and has all the knowledge that you want to expose to the user. So you want to create something called a web hook. Now, this is under the fulfillment section. This is where you can link your API.ai agent to your back-end system. So what we're going to do is switch it on. Now you enter a URL which is going to receive the JSON payload the API.ai has parsed from the intent and the parameters, and it's going to post the JSON to your endpoint. You're going to respond with a JSON response, and that's going to be then used by API.ai to speak the results to the user. So there's many ways to do this. It's just a URL, it is just JSON, it is just a post. So yeah, you can run it on App Engine, you can run it on Cloud Functions, you can run it in Apache, Ruby, whatever you want to do. So it's just a regular HTTP call to the back end. So we're going to do something a bit funky, and hopefully it'll go quite quickly. We don't want to be sitting here deploying App Engines and Docker containers and all that kind of stuff. So under Google Cloud Platform, I've got a sample project called Chicago Roboto, and we are going to create a cloud function. So this is one of the things that Google released not too long ago, which is very exciting. It kind of means you can run code without you having to have a server yourself. It just runs inside Google's infrastructure. You write some stuff in JavaScript. Now I'm going to prefix all of this. I used to be a JavaScript guy years ago. I'm now more of a Java guy. JavaScript moved on way too quickly for me. New frameworks every day. So yeah, my JavaScript skills aren't as elite as they used to be. So we're going to do some quick copy paste, and I'll talk you through the 20 lines of code that we're going to be setting up. So hopefully this was going to be a bit quicker, but we're just enabling the API. So we've created a back-end project. We're going to enable the API, and if it hurries up, I'll show you how to set up the webhook. Essentially what's happening whilst we're doing this, so here we go, create our first function. So we're going to we'll leave the defaults here for now. Function 1, we'll leave it in US Central. The important thing, halfway down, crikey, that's quite small, isn't it, on the screen? Let's make that a bit bigger, hopefully. So on the left-hand side, about halfway down, you can see the word trigger. So here we're going to use HTTP trigger. So we're going to get HTTP request coming in, which is going to start this particular function, and it's this URL here that's been created for us that we want to put into our API.ai webhook page here. So we cut and paste one into the other. You can set up authentication if you want to do that. Obviously we don't need that for our demo today. Hit save. That's done from this point of view, which is good. Now the cloud function, this is where you can use their rather sexy editor to import your JavaScript, and I should have a project here where I can cut and paste it from. Hopefully I didn't delete it. No, I deleted it. Okay, we'll skip that bit. So that would be where you would add your JavaScript. Now again, where's the cloud functions over here? I did have a thing. Okay, we'll skip that bit. So yeah, so when you're creating your JavaScript, you get an assistant class. You've got methods on there where you can receive the response from the user. You can parse the response. You can send stuff back. One of the important things to remember is there's two ways to send the information back to the user. You can say assistant.tell, and tell being the sort of parameter name, and this is going to send a phrase back to API.ai, and it's going to end the conversation. If you want to keep the conversation going, you want to respond with assistant.ask, and that's going to leave the microphone open to continue the conversation. So once you sit there and say, hey, these intents are going to be managed through a webhook, and you don't have to do all of them through a webhook. Let's say make appointment is the one you're interested in. Fulfillment is down the bottom here, and you can now say use webhook. So rather than using our default text response that we've set up here, this is going to now throw it to the webhook, and the webhook is now going to be in charge of responding with the JSON payload and fulfilling that one. If we have a quick look at the JSON here, these are the kind of bits and pieces. I've got a slide that shows a condensed version of this, but the interesting parts are the parameters. So you can see how they've been broken down into leg and arm. You can see that the action is incomplete, is false. So this is good because as you refine the questions, hey, I'd like to make an appointment. Well, that's not a complete response. We want to respond back saying, okay, well, what time, what day, this kind of stuff. So you get a flag to tell you whether the response is considered complete. And yeah, so that's the JSON. So what we'll do, we'll go back to the slides for the last couple of minutes. Show the code. We've only got a couple of slides left to go. So yes, so here's the webhook JSON I mentioned. My head is bleeding. Incomplete is false, so this means we've got a full request that we're ready to handle. And in this example, which I did previously, we had body parts as head, and the symptoms is bleeding. So you're asking for more information, and then you can use that to make a diagnosis later on. One of the interesting pieces we've highlighted at the bottom is the session ID. As you're having this conversation backwards and forwards with the server, session ID is going to be consistent for each of those interactions. So you can build up on the server side a session that says, okay, their head hurts, they're bleeding, their leg hurts. You can start to build up some context around the problem of what's going on, and serve that response with more information that you've gathered over time. So, in review, what have we done today? We've sort of created an API.ai agent. We've set up some intents about the use cases that we want to handle. We've set up some entities that we care about, as well as using some of the ones that are built in to the system. We've created some sample requests. Apply AI learning. So if somebody had mentioned a body part that we hadn't added in our list of entities early on, our toes are hurting, our fingers are hurting, you can then apply some learning to say, actually, it's going to come back with an error message and go, sorry, I don't know what you mean when you say toes. You can apply some AI learnings and say, actually, toes is also a body part, fingers are also a body part. So over time, as you're seeing these requests coming in, you get a sort of a log of the ones that have failed to match a particular intent. You can then link them back in sort of real time and say, actually, no, this one's good, toes, we've got about toes, arms, legs, feet, knees, elbows. And then the system over time will then start to pick those up and realize body parts is bigger than what you typed in originally. We tried and failed to create and deploy a webhook for processing the requests. So this is where your expert system comes in. This is the thing that's going to fulfill the requests and has all the knowledge about the space that you want to get involved with. Testing. Obviously, there's going to be lots of scenarios here. There's going to be lots of ways and phrases that people have of saying things. One of the examples that Google had was ING. They were doing some chatbot stuff regarding credit cards. I asked for a credit card, it didn't arrive in the post, where's my credit card? So they got a demo chatbot, and they were talking about having hundreds of different expressions of how can you ask this question in different ways. So these are the things you have to learn over time. These are the things you have to build up over time as well. And then submit for approval. So if you want it to be public, you have to submit it to Google, so you have to create a Google project. They're going to review your submission. Again, for things like, is the microphone left open? Does it have a good name? You have to upload some photos so that people can discover it inside the Google Home app. If you want some more info, here are all the links. Actions on Google is the main kind of starting point. Cloud Functions, if you want to run your own functions in your webhooks in the cloud, is here. Extending Google Assistant is a Cloud Next 17 video, really informative, really good. Your next app might be about another one from Cloud Next 17. So those are really good starting points as well. They're going to go into more information on what the developers here today. If, like me, you're not a JavaScript person and you want to write the bindings for your webhook in Java, there's an unofficial SDK for doing that kind of interaction at the back end. And that's the end of my slide. So hopefully, the last thing we should be able to show, if this is all
The
good.
mic's back on.
Okay, Google. I'd like to speak to Chicago Roboto.
Sorry, I don't know how to help with that yet.
Okay, so there we go. We failed miserably on that one as well, but hopefully that should
The
have come
mic
through.
is muted.
Anyway, so that's me. That's my talk. Thank you very much. I know we're over on time, but I'll quickly take a question or so.
How does it handle authentication with backend? Your apps require the user?
Yes, okay, so the question was how do you handle authentication on the back end? There is a system built into the Google Actions API where you can ask the user to authenticate and it'll take you through a sort of user flow. I haven't done that myself in any of my sort of examples, but yes, there is a way you can check the user is who you think they are.
Can you actually get access to the raw voice data itself? So, for instance, if I were to do things like look at the stress level of the voice or something like that, the audio.
I don't believe so. I think you just get the text, because obviously the interaction with the Google Assistant could be through Google Home or it could be through the text-based Allo, and you're not going to get necessarily the text, the audible file as part of the delivery. One of the things I didn't show as well is once you've set up your bot on API.ai, you can then also link it into Facebook Messenger, Slack Messenger as well quite easily, because they handle the interaction with that side of things for you. So your chatbot, you just kind of write once, run anywhere, which is kind of handy. Anyway, I'm going to be around for the next couple of days. If you've got any questions, come and see me, and I'll try and answer them. And yeah, maybe we'll get the demo working outside later on, so you can see how it works properly. Thank you.